Welcome to another edition of Bigger Than Sports. I'm your host, Chris Williamson, and joining me for this week's episode is two-time Super Bowl champ, Hall of Fame coach, Tony Dungy. Coach, thanks so much for joining us, first off.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's go back to your childhood now. What was it like growing up in Jackson, Michigan, in an area that was predominantly white?
You have to remember the time frame. I was born in 1955, so I'm growing up in the 60s. I'm in high school in the 70s, very turbulent time. Jackson is a small automotive community. The city itself is maybe 30% African-American, but we ended up living in a predominantly African-American community, getting bused to white middle school, white high school. And it was not, I don't want to say a culture shock, but certainly different for me, learning two different ways of living.
As far as your playing career, you went on to play at the University of Minnesota, where at the end of your time, Coach, you held nearly every major passing record for the university. So I'm sure you expected to be drafted in the NFL as a QB. Why was that not the case for you and so many other black quarterbacks at the time?
I ended up going to the University of Minnesota because they had a history of playing black quarterbacks, and I wanted to keep that tradition going. But I go on, I don't get drafted, and they tell me, well, my skill set isn't set for the NFL. So I have a chance to go to Canada and play quarterback like so many African-American quarterbacks at that time, or I could go to the NFL and switch positions. So I decided, hey, I want to play with the best. I'll switch positions. I ended up going to Pittsburgh and becoming the safety. The next year, Warren Moon comes out. He's the most valuable player in the Pac-10. He's the most valuable player of the Rose Bowl, which they win, and he doesn't get drafted. They tell him his skill set is not what the NFL is looking for. Warren didn't want to change positions. He goes to Canada, wins 5 Grey Cups in 6 years, and then comes back. But that's the kind of the times that we were living in. And now we see Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson. Well, we had those kind of guys, but they didn't get the opportunity back then.
Let's switch gears to the lack of diversity among the NFL head coaches. You wrote a heartfelt and powerful essay to the NFL owners about the responsibility in making sure the diversity is where it needs to be. What compelled you to write that letter at this time, and what did you want to get out of it?
You know, it kind of reminded me, I went back to 1993 when we had a really good team. There were a lot of openings, and I didn't get an interview. I saw the same thing happening with some of these outstanding coaches. That's what made me reach out to the owners and say, hey, you guys have to do a better job. Are you really trying to tell us that you've done exhaustive searches in the last 3 years? You've had 20 new positions and only 2 African Americans? Are we really looking under every stone and crevice?
And did you receive any responses from the owners after you wrote that letter? And if so, what type of responses did you get from them?
I've gotten a lot of responses from people in football saying that was needed to be said, and assistant coaches and kind of general manager types, and people saying thank you. But I haven't gotten any response from any owners yet. So we'll see what happens.
Are you surprised by that, or?
Not really. I think that the response will come down the line, and hopefully it'll come with them in their thought process. We've got to get these owners and general managers to say, you know what? I have to do what's best. I've got to pick the best guy. And hopefully people can understand that we're not asking for quotas. Hey, hire 6 African-American coaches, hire 8 minority coaches. No, just make sure you're doing a thorough job, investigate everything, and pick the best person.
And you speak to these coaches, you have a great pulse or great understanding, of what the morale is like. So at this current time, what is the vibe that you're getting from, coaches in the NFL right now, black coaches in the NFL right now?
There's a sense of discouragement right now, of disappointment. Guys saying, what has to be done? What do I have to do to get an opportunity just to get in the room and be interviewed and show people what I can do? My son, Eric, is 29 years old, and he played college football. He played for Chip Kelly at Oregon, played in the kind of new wave offense. He's been around football his whole life. He had several people want to hire him. Jim Caldwell, when he was at Detroit, was going to hire him on the coaching staff. Chip Kelly offered him a job. And Eric said, no, I'd rather go in another line of work, because I don't see the opportunities to advance. And, to me, that's a shame. If someone would sit there and say, this may not be the profession for me because there really isn't a chance to move up the ladder, we're going to lose some really quality minds if we're not careful.